everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is April Huntsman, and I am the Senior Director of Animal Welfare at Adopt-A-Pet. You may have known us as adoptapet.com. Before that, we dropped the .com a few years ago, and Adopt-A-Pet is also home of Rehome by Adopt-A-Pet. So I happen to be a little bit of a data junkie, and when I was at the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies conference earlier this year, I was listening to some of the different things going on during lunchtime and some of the interest in data points. And so I reached out to Diana and I said, hey, we have a bunch of data. I'm happy to pull that data for just the state of Virginia and actually let you all take a peek at it to see what's going on Adopt-A-Pet in the state of Virginia, also with the Rehome, which is the supported self-rehoming. So that's what this presentation is all about. It is very, very data heavy. So every single slide has charts and graphs on it. Because of that, please feel free to type into the chat if you have a question. I'm happy to pause and we can talk through that question right away. But I'm going to send over the PDF to Diana and she will send it out to everyone so that you guys can actually view it later on and take it all in again, just because I know it's a lot to look at a bunch of charts and graphs for an hour. And with that, I will get started. So I'm going to we're going to actually start kind of way, way outside on internet search trends. Because before we get to Adopt-A-Pet, somebody's actually got to go online and search to find Adopt-A-Pet or to find your website or to find Rehome if they're trying to give up a pet. And so I think it's really important that we understand what's actually going on over the past several years with regards to people looking online. So let's get into search trends. And this is a tool that I use. It's free to everyone. The website is up here in the corner. It's trends.google.com. And what this does is allow you to peek inside the mind of the Google search engine. 90% of all searches online are run through the Google search engine. So if you know what's going on in Google, you really know what's going on in the minds of people looking to acquire a pet or looking to rehome a pet or looking for some kind of resources. When you go into this website, you can actually search up to 5 search phrases and you can compare those phrases. So you can see here, I'm comparing dogs for sale, puppies for sale, cats for sale, kittens for sale. You can add a 5th one as well. What's really great about Google Trends is that you can look at it from a national level. You can look at Canada if you wanted to, but you can actually go down into the state level. And if you live in an area that's a large metro area, you can even drill down to a metro area as well. If you live in a rural area, unfortunately, there's probably not enough search traffic for Google to keep track of that, but you can go down to the state level and look at Virginia. When you're comparing these to each other, I just want everyone to remember this is not a percentage. So when we see this little box here that says puppies for sale 100, 100 just means that's when it peaked in search compared to the other ones during that timeline. And this will make more sense as we start to look at the other charts. But the lower number means it was searched less compared to those other phrases. If you're only looking at one phrase, then it would be searched less over that period of time. This allows you to actually go back to, I believe, 2004, so about 20 years. You can see what's actually been going on. And you can search different categories. So you can search terms, but you can also look at videos or different things like that. Google has a lot of information on YouTube once they acquired them several years ago. So let's get into what's actually been going on with dogs. I happened to get the opportunity to kind of run around the country all year long, and I definitely have heard loud and clear, no matter where I visit, that dog interest seems to be waning, and also that large dog acquisition is definitely feeling like it's flat. Shelter Animals Count has some great data on this, so I would definitely recommend that you check out their latest report. But when we look at people searching online for these different search phrases, I went all the way back to 2004 to show here. Dogs for adoption, it was moving up from 2015 to 2020. We had that huge peak all across the board for dogs and cats during the very beginning of the pandemic where everyone was at home and everyone was searching online. Adopt-A-Pet, actually, we usually had 3 million visits per month. In the month of April 2020, we had 12 million visits, and that actually crashed our servers multiple times. So people were just online looking at pets to acquire. And what these yellow bubbles are showing you is that right now, dogs for adoption is searched a similar amount as 2017. So we are actually seeing fewer searches on dogs for adoption than even before the pandemic. 2017 is where we're at right now. When we look at adopted dog, it's actually right back to where it was in 2010 as far as people searching that phrase online. For puppies for adoption, we're back to numbers in 2007, and the phrase adopt a puppy is the lowest it's ever been since Google started tracking in 2004. So I think this really shows why everyone in this industry does feel like we're just not getting as much interest in the dogs that we have in our care. And there just seem to be fewer people coming in wanting to take that dog home because there's just fewer people searching online. I definitely would recommend that everyone on this call go to trends.google.com and definitely do this in the state of Virginia and dig into those and take a look at those. Because it could be slightly different, but in general, this is across the nation. Everyone's seeing this. Now, cats are having their moment in the sun finally after many, many years of being second-class citizens. So what we see here is that cats for adoption was actually coming up all the way from 2015. We hit that peak in 2020 with the pandemic, but it really has not gone down. It's still very, very high and was always on that incline since 2015. So there's just a lot of interest in bringing a cat home, and there has been now for 10 years. When we look at adopt a cat, it's also still very high. It definitely peaked during the pandemic, but it's still remaining higher than it's ever been if you take out the pandemic era. Kittens for adoption is also still high, and adopt a kitten also still high, back to 2019 levels, but still very, very high. So there are people who are very, very interested in bringing home a cat, more so than we've seen basically in the history of the internet. Now, something worth calling out here is that doesn't mean that there are as many people searching online for dogs as there are for cats. What we see at Adopt a Pet is about 75% of the people that come to our site are searching for a dog and 25% are searching for a cat. So if we were to take kittens for adoption against puppies for adoption, puppies would be much, much higher in search traffic. If we were to take dogs for adoption compared to cats for adoption, dogs for adoption would be much, much higher in search traffic. And cats are acquired in many different ways. It's not often that you find a dog on the street that's pregnant and you help that litter of puppies. That happens very commonly with kittens. It's very common for people to have a community cat around that they then decide they want to keep and adopt, and they consider that adoption. So we know that cats come into households very differently than dogs. And that's why throughout this presentation, we are going to be looking at cat and dog data separate from one another. The last one here that I think is really important to call out is the for sale. So this is just comparing dogs for sale, puppies for sale, cats for sale, and kittens for sale. And it's pretty wild that people do search cats and kittens for sale. But when we look at these four, we see that puppies for sale is searched far more than the other search terms. But what's interesting about puppies for sale is that's actually at an all-time low as well. So that really goes back to this idea that dog acquisition seems to be waning right now, regardless of whether people are searching for sale, buy a dog, or even adoption search terms. And let me, sorry, just break that out. Okay. So now I'm going to get into the Adopt a Pet supply and demand, which when we look at this, we have like our giant website where there's any given time there's 300,000 pets on our site, and we do in the month of March we had 6.5 million searches ran nationally. But I think it's really important for us to just look at Virginia because we know California and Texas and Florida make up a large percentage of searches because they have a huge percentage of the population. So for cats, I just want us to have this number in mind that Virginia accounts for 2.6% of the US population. And so that's a great number for us to use as a control to know if there's more supply on our site in comparison to the population, or is there more demand on the site in comparison to the population? It's kind of a way for us to have something to look at to know what the state is actually doing. And another thing I need to call out here is that our data does not include all shelters and rescues. We know we have about 75 to 80% of all shelters and rescues listing on Adopt a Pet, but it is not 100% inclusive of all the pets that are available for adoption out there in Virginia. So what we see here is that even though Virginia only accounts for 2.6% of the population, there's 3.6% of all the cats on Adopt a Pet are in the state of Virginia. And so it's higher, if we look at that 2.6 as a control, it's higher than what it ideally would be. You would see it at 2.6% or lower. Just in shelters, there's 2.9% of all the cats in shelters on Adopt-A-Pet are in Virginia. Rescue cats, 4.2%. This could be because we have more organizations that are rescues in Virginia using us than in other states. Definitely could be part of the reason. And then available cats on rehome, it's 2.8% as well. I'm going to get into a bunch of rehome data, so I won't touch too much here on the rehome cats specifically. Now, when we look at demand, we should also use that 2.6% as the population, because that would be right around where we would expect demand to come in. But what we see here is actually Virginia has a decent demand, even, which is great because you have a higher percentage of pets in your care. You need a higher percentage of demand as well. So you've got a very active state in that they're online searching and looking for cats to adopt. So cat searches, 2.8% of all cat searches on Adopt-A-Pet are going to be in the state of Virginia. New pet alerts saved is 4.1%. So this is when people can come to the website and we encourage them to actually save their search so that we will email them when a cat matches what they're looking for so that they don't have to keep checking back. So that's a new pet alert email. When we look at inquiries submitted, so it says submit an inquiry, I'm interested in this pet. We see 3.7%, which is great because that's a full percentage point higher than the population. But where this differs is shelters are at 2.6%, rescues are at 4.2%. And this is likely because rescues tend to have better quality profiles. So they tend to have more photos, they tend to have a video, personality indicators, a bit more information because most rescues are foster-based. And so they're getting a lot more information than shelters are. Another factor that plays in here is we do allow organizations to turn the inquiry form off, and shelters are more likely to have that inquiry form turned off as well. And then when we look at the cat profiles viewed, we see here it's 3.7% of all the views on Adopt-A-Pet are on those cats in Virginia, which is great. Now, when we look at dogs, coming back to that 2.6, we see available dogs were at 2.8%, available dogs in shelters is 2.0%, which that should actually be flipped. That's actually great because there's fewer dogs in shelters compared to the population. Rescues are 3.3% and rehome is 2.8%. So the shelters in Virginia have fewer dogs if we use the Virginia population as the control, which is fantastic. When we look at demand, what we see here is that dog searches are higher at 3%, new pet alerts saved are 2.9%, inquiries submitted are 3%, for all inquiries, while shelters are at 1.3%. So I did dig into this one a little bit, why this number is so low, and it's because there are some substantial shelters in the state of Virginia that do not have their inquiry form turned on. And so those are causing that number to actually be lower. For inquiries submitted on rescues, it's 3.6%. And then the dog profiles viewed, we see all of the views that happen in the United States. 2.9% of those are actually going to be on dogs that are in the state of Virginia, which is fantastic. So when we look at just demand, I wanted to take a look to see how many views can we expect in a day? This is just in the state of Virginia, and how many views on pets can we see in a year, let's say. So for cats, in just the state of Virginia, there are 2,000 searches a day run on Adopt-A-Pet for just cats. There are 705,000 searches run every year in the state of Virginia on Adopt-A-Pet for cats. And I think that's probably way more than cats that come through shelters and rescues in the state of Virginia. So there's a lot of demand and interest for cats. Daily profile views. So there's about 6,000 profiles viewed of cats every single day. Now there's way more cats than that, of course, but that means that people are going in and clicking on different profiles 6,000 times each day. That equates to 2.2 million profiles viewed of cats each year in just the state of Virginia alone. When we look at dogs, this is that kind of 75-25%. For the state of Virginia, it's exactly that, right? We've got 6,000 daily searches on dogs, while only 2,000 on cats. We have 2.2 million annual searches of dogs in the state of Virginia, 16,000 profile views every single day for the dogs that are in your care, and 5.8 million annual profile views for just dogs. And these are just for Virginia. So there's there's a lot of stuff happening online when those pets are listed on Adopt-a-Pet. There's a lot of people going in there and clicking on those pets and searching and clicking on the profiles and submitting those new pet alerts and inquiries. So it's pretty exciting when you look at these numbers. I know you may not feel it, but we see a lot of traffic for the pets that are actually in Virginia and from the people that are in Virginia looking to adopt those pets. So I just want to pause here to see if anyone has any questions. You're welcome to come off mute and ask me. We can go back a few slides before I get into the rehome data. Okay, great. So Rehome by Adopt-a-Pet was started in 2017 is when it officially launched in March 2017. It is the largest database of people rehoming their pets that I believe has ever existed. We get about 500 new pets added every single day into the Rehome platform. And it's finally given us the opportunity to peek inside what people are doing when they're rehoming their pets when they're not coming to the shelter. And this is where you're going to get to see our national search trends right up next to the Virginia search trends. I do want to mention that 80% of the people that create a profile on Rehome actually come to us organically. They do not come in from a shelter or rescue referral. And that is because when we launched Rehome back in 2017, we made sure to use search terms on our site that people would get to if they searched get rid of my dog, give up my cat, terminology that the public was using. And because Rehome was the first of its kind back in 2017, we were able to really make sure when people search those terms that they're actually coming to Rehome, which is great because that means they're less likely to come to your organization and need to rehome their pet. They're going to use this Rehome database and platform to actually serve the needs of rehoming their pet and getting it to a new home. So we're going to look at cats first. And here's the breakdown of cats listed. We're going to always have the national on the left and the Virginia data on the right. So what we see here is not much difference between national data. You can see slightly more likely to have a female listed than a male cat, but definitely not a big difference here between national and Virginia. When we look at the age group, we do see a bit of difference here. So nationally, we see, 19% are kitten and 33% are young, while we see a lower number for kittens in Virginia. So just 14% are kittens. This may be because you have some great programming that's helping people and reducing the number of kittens being born. It could also be that you offer spay and neuter and kittens can go directly through the shelter for adoption or foster programs. But 5 percentage points lower for kittens being listed and slightly more seniors being listed in Virginia than nationally. So these are the reasons for rehoming. So when we look at it from a national perspective, I went back all the way to, I think this is all data, so 2017. What we see here is the vast majority of cats, it's going to be relocating, followed by human health issues. Oftentimes that's related to allergies, does not get along with the other pet in the household. And then you can see as we go down, they found it. This is very common with cats where they found it or they thought it was abandoned because it was like a loosely owned cat, followed by busy schedule, landlord permission issues, infant, young children, or pregnancy, and then fostered. A lot of people will consider when they found fostered. We separated it out, but a lot of people think they're fostering a litter of kittens when they found a mom that had babies. Behavioral issues, ongoing cost of care. So this is, I can't afford to feed my cats or buy litter, things like that. And then a pet medical expense would be that one-time expense. Now, when we look at this compared to Virginia, we see that the first three are the same, but it actually starts moving around. So fostered is lower, behavior issues is higher in the list compared to nationally. Landlord permissions is kind of right there in the middle. And then you see pet medical expenses is still really, really low and ongoing cost of care. What you can take from this, maybe not specifically for Virginia, but just for reasons for rehome, is it's tough to offer programming for like that one-time medical expense, or you can offer, pet pantries or things like that to help people with that ongoing cost of care. But when relocating is the top, it's difficult to try to get someone to keep their pet if they can't afford the pet rent, if they're moving somewhere that doesn't accept the cat. Human health issues is also a hard one because if somebody has allergies, it's hard to get them to keep the cat because they don't necessarily want to keep it if they have allergies. And so that's why the Rehome platform exists, is because we know there are people that cannot keep the cat no matter what, and we do not want them to have to take it to a shelter or get a rescue organization to take it in. So these are the top breeds listed by cats. And, cat breeds are a little bit different than dog breeds, but this just shows that regardless of whether we're looking at just Virginia or nationally, domestic short hair accounts for like 1/3 cats listed. Interesting that American short hair is used a lot more by the general public than we maybe do in our industry. But 1 in 5 is going to be listed as American short hair, and then domestic medium hair. And then it starts getting lower. I know calico and tabby are not breeds, but they're listed in our breed list for drop down. And so you can see that it's the same 10 breeds, they just have a slight difference there. But the vast majority are going to be listed as short hair, medium, or long hair. So we also ask, how long are you willing to keep the cat until you place it in a new home? And what you can see here is nationally, almost 18% have less than 1 week, 35% 1 to 2 weeks. For Virginia, only 12% have less than 1 week and 27% less than 2 weeks. Now, Adopt a Pet, it takes on average 20 days to place a cat. So anyone that's in the 3 to 4 weeks, 8 weeks, no limit, we feel like we're able to help. It's that group that's under 3 weeks that's difficult for us to get that cat placed that quickly. But in general, those that are listing their pet on Rehome have more time when they're in Virginia compared to the national numbers. What's pretty wild to see here is that whether you're looking at the national number or the Virginia numbers, is that there's a large percentage, over 1 out of 10 people who are willing to keep the cat indefinitely until they find the right home for it, which is great, and that they've not put a time limit on it. And we do have cats that are available for adoption through Rehome that have been on the site for a year. So when they say there's no limit, they really do mean that there's no limit. And then this is the number of applications that these animals received. So because this is all done on Rehome, we can track the applications. We can't tell you how many applications you're receiving on a cat or a dog as a shelter or rescue organization, but the application process is done on Adopt a Pet when a pet is listed through Rehome. And so what we see here is it's very similar between national and Virginia, is, almost half get 1 application, and then you can see another 20% get 2 applications, 3, 4, and then 5+ applications. We do have a limit of 20 applications. Once they've received 20 applications, they actually are hidden from public view, and we ask the person to make a selection, because 20 applications is a lot on a cat. They should be able to find the right fit with those 20 applications. So these are the outcomes. Now, not every cat that gets listed on our site has an outcome. Sometimes they go stale, but of the ones that do have an outcome, this is that outcome. So what we see is that 50% get adopted, and this could be adopted through our platform, adopted to a friend or family, or some other way, but the person has come in and marked the pet as it was adopted. We see there's a percentage that are still listed as available. High demand, those are those that went into that hidden status because they have 20 applications. We kind of consider them adopted because we know they have 20 applications, they're probably going to get adopted, but I just wanted to call those out separately. What we can see is around 31% decide to keep the pet. Now, what happens here oftentimes is they list the pet, and then as soon as they get 1 application, that's when they mark the pet as kept, because it's real now. They have a person who's actually interested in their pet, and they'll think, oh, maybe I should try this and try some other things or continue to work through this. Maybe I wasn't as serious about rehoming my pet as I thought, but that's pretty impressive that almost 1 out of 3 are kept. And then we see the 13%, so it's about 1 out of 6, I believe, that are actually relinquished to a shelter or rescue organization. And it's the same nationally and in the state of Virginia. So this is the let me see. Oh, over time, I wanted you guys to see like what's been happening since it launched. So I took out 2017 numbers, but you can see what's been happening on the adopted. So if you look in 2018, you can see 53% were marked as adopted, while 25% were marked as kept, adopt, and 12% were marked as relinquished. And this is national versus Virginia over time. And I think you can see where things are quite impressive in the state of Virginia is that 59% are marked as adopted, while only 49% nationally. So Virginia has a higher, by 10 percentage points higher, people that are able to place their pet through rehome than if we just look at the national average. We also see, though, that keeping their pets, they're less likely to do that compared to the national number. At 37% of national outcomes are kept, where only 25% in the state of Virginia. And this is just for cats. Dogs are going to look very different. And then for relinquish, we see that there's actually 15% of the cats that are being relinquished in Virginia compared to that lower number nationally. So there's more relinquished, more adoption, which is great. Fewer kept. So if we could convert some of those relinquished to kept or relinquished to adopted, that would be great. But this is just showing you Virginia numbers for cats on rehome compared to nationally. So let's get into dogs. Dogs are very different. So what we see here is that dogs, males are more likely to be listed than females for both national and Virginia numbers. And in the state of Virginia, you can see it's actually 57% are going to be male versus 54%. I don't know if behavior is part of this or what's driving this, but it is different than cats. When we look at age groups here, what we see is whereas with cats, it was different nationally versus Virginia. For dogs, it's very much similar in that age group. And you can see, 17% are going to be puppies, 40% are going to be young. So basically almost 60% are going to be young or puppy that are being rehomed through the rehome platform. So for the reasons for rehome, while on cats, it was relocating. On dogs, it's busy schedule that actually pops out at the top. And with cats, busy schedule was down there a little ways. So it was relocating, followed by human health issues, followed by does not get along with other pet. For dogs, what we see is busy schedule, relocating, and then does not get along with other pet. What's interesting about not getting along with other pet is some of those also will pop up in the behavior issues. It just depends on how the pet owner wanted to classify it. And then busy schedule, we've done some follow-up surveying to try to get a better idea of busy schedule, and there's a few different things that will land in there. Sometimes it's that they're too busy for this pet. Sometimes they're too busy for any pet, and sometimes this pet's too busy for them, basically. So those kind of all fall in there. So I would guess that some of those busy schedules should actually fall into behavior issues as well. When we look at the state of just Virginia, what we see is busy schedule and relocating also comes out on top, but does not get along with other pet, goes way down into the center. And then the infant young children is the one that's actually third on the list here. So this could be because organizations in Virginia offer more resources or better training on how to get dogs to get along with other pets in the household. But you can see that there are some differences here between reason for rehome. So when it comes to dogs listed through rehome, Virginia has a slightly higher percentage of pit bulls than national numbers, lower percentage of Labrador retrievers compared to national at 10.6. Fewer German Shepherds, 5.7% versus 8% nationally. And then Huskies are slightly lower as well. And then from there down, it kind of changes. So you see Chihuahuas nationally are always in the top 5 listed breeds on rehome. They're also the top 5 searched breeds on Adopt-A-Pet. But we've got Australian Shepherds, Boxers, the Staffies, and then the cattle dogs. Whereas in Virginia, Boxers there as well, and Chihuahua and Staffy, but hounds are listed more often on rehome. We did not see that in the national data. Oh, and so this one's very different than with cats. So what we see here is nationally, 16% have less than 1 week, but in Virginia, 14% have less than 1 week. And so in Virginia, they tend to have a little bit more time than nationally to actually place the dog, which is great because the average time to place a dog, this is a misspelling, it shouldn't say cat, it should say dog, through rehome is just 19 days. So it's 1 day less than it is for cats. So that anything that's in blue or green, rehome can basically probably help them place that pet so it doesn't need to come into a shelter or rescue organization. And when you get a copy of this presentation, it may be interesting for you to actually look at the dogs and cats next to each other. I didn't put that together for these slides because it can get a little bit overwhelming, but you may want to actually look at those just to see in Virginia the time to rehome dogs next to cats, because that really can help you have great programming when people reach out to you and need to rehome their pet. How long do they have based off the species, and what are the reasons that they're rehoming based off species? So this is number of applications. You can see dogs are way more likely to have a lot of applications. So 5+ applications for 30% of dogs nationally, and 38% of dogs in Virginia have 5+ applications. So that's a lot. Just 1 in 3 have 1 application and then 2 applications. So they get a lot of applications, and in Virginia, they get more applications than they do nationally. So on average, they're going to have more number of applications, which is great. And dogs also have that 20 application limit. So these are the outcomes for dogs, similar to cats. So we see nationally it's 51% are adopted, while in Virginia, 52% are adopted. Kept, we see 33% nationally, 31.6% in Virginia. And then relinquished, we've got 11.8% for dogs nationally and 11.3% relinquished in the state of Virginia. So similar to cats here, this is another one that may be interesting to look at dogs and cats next to each other. And you can see here that sliver of blue, that high demand. There are many more dogs that are in high demand than cats. So it's more likely that a dog will hit that 20 application limit than cats will. And then when we look at that data from 2018 to 2024, you can see that Virginia has a slightly higher percentage of those that are marked out as adopted, while the national average is higher for kept, and then there's just basically the same number of relinquished. But both adopted and kept we consider positive outcomes, and so Virginia and nationally, dogs are more likely to be kept or adopted than relinquished compared to the cats. And with that, that's my 20 slides of data on what is going on in Virginia compared to our national data. Are there any questions I can answer?
I have a ton of questions.
Great.
I'm worried. Let me put video on so I'm not like the just mysterious K. I'm worried of the relevance, not want to waste people's time. So I don't know if I could talk to you offline. I run the Virginia Partnership for Horses, and we've always seen a lot of relinquishment of horses, and I didn't even know the rehome thing existed on Adopt a Pet. And we need it for horses badly in Virginia.
Yeah, rehome is only for dogs and cats.
Right.
And we've been asked many times for rehome for rabbits, horses, and small critters.
Yeah. I just have a bunch of questions about like how it works. Like one of the things that with the horse thing that we have trouble with is like contracts, right? So like horses are a bit more livestocky than pets. And so people want to be sure that the owners that they're going to, and I'm sure this would be a concern in dogs and cats as well, that the owners are going to take care of that animal. And if they decide not to keep it, then the previous owner would have first right of refusal, that kind of thing. Does that exist through Rehome and Adopt a Pet?
Yeah, so we have an application that is very basic. We don't get into a lot of complex questions, but we get into the questions that we believe the pet owner should know and ask the potential adopter. And then that application is given over to the adopter. And then we give them a bunch of screening guidance as well, because the pet owner, like for instance, we ask how many hours alone will this pet be each day. the pet owner is like, why are you asking that question? So we give them a bunch of guidance around like why we would ask that question and why that's important to think about when you're thinking about where to rehome your pet. Age groups of children, we don't ask specifically their ages, but kind of what age group do they land in? Have they ever had a pet before? And then we give guidance for every single question we ask to the pet owner. It's up to the pet owner to actually reach out to the applicant and set up a meet and greet. We also give guidance around that as well. And we actually are piloting right now with PetSmart, where there's 30 locations in the US where you can actually go to PetSmart to do your meet and greet, and the PetSmart staff will help with that. And then once that meet and greet has been finished, we provide a binding transfer of ownership agreement. We used to call it an adoption contract, but our attorneys have said animals are property, so it's just really like a property transfer that looks nice and isn't so like you're buying a car. And it just lists out all of the legal things that have to be put on there. And there's an agreement that basically the pet owner decides if they want the pet back if it doesn't work out, or if they want that new owner to use rehome to place the pet if it doesn't work out. And it kind of releases some liability between the two parties, but it's very, very basic. And we provide that to the pet owner and the adopter, and it's on them to get it signed and kept. We do not house any of we used to, but we do not house like any of the adoption contracts or anything like that any longer because of all of the legal liability that comes
Right.
with that.
I can't even imagine. So you are
Yeah,
like, I mean, and it's so typical with dog and cat people. You are leading the way for the rest of us to try to figure out and step in your shoes and how you're doing it. I've been coming to dog and cat conferences for a while, so I can kind of get an edge on the horse thing. Is there a way I can talk to you offline about this? There are some really good programs. One exists in Maryland, an owner-to-owner program, and they have resources, but I would love just to check in with you about how to,
sure.
um,
Yeah, if you email this email address, helpdesk@adoptapet.com, and just ask them for April's calendar link, they'll just send you a link to my calendar and you can just pick a time that works for you and it'll just pop up on my calendar. And that's anybody on this call. I'm always happy to talk through your Adopt-A-Pet account, what's going to help your pets get adopted, talk about the features we've just released, the data for your pets. Like, we do try to provide a higher level of service to you because we want your pets to get adopted. Yeah, so definitely email and say, I went to a presentation April gave and she said, send me her calendar link.
okay, this is really, really tremendous. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Linda, I have an entire presentation on what people are searching for. If you want to email help desk at, I will send it to you. It's like 50 slides of everything that people are searching for, what's going to get your pet scenes, why photos matter. Diana, maybe we can do a webinar later that's just around adoption marketing, because we have a ton of data around things like a high quality photo increases engagement by 500%. 15 to 30-second video is going to increase engagement by an additional 130%. People are very interested in personality traits, less likely behavior. Right now, we're doing some research on what does the photo need to look like? Do you need props? Do you need a person? Does it need to be front facing? All of that. Because that research was done, but I think it's about 10 years old now. So we want to redo it now that Instagram has kind of changed the way that we look at photos. So happy to share that presentation, and you can basically run through it, look at it. If you have questions, we can definitely get on a call and kind of run through any questions you have, but we have all of that data. And then I like Susie's comment around reinforces the importance of managed intake, considering 31% of pet owners keep their pet. Yeah, I think what's really interesting, if you use Shelter Animals Count and you're using Rehome, and we've given you a referral link that's got kind of a little code in it, you can actually see any pet that you referred in your Shelter Animals Count dashboard now. So you can see, even when you're referring to people and you don't know what happened, you can log in there and see how many people kept their pet. And it's always pretty surprising to people when you look at your own referrals, because so many people will end up keeping their pet. And I think the lowest I've seen is 15%, on a shelter where of all the pets they referred, 15% ended up keeping their pet. So highly recommend that if you are promoting rehome, that you at least get a Shelter Animals Count account for you to look at your rehome data, because we just decided to put it in there rather than have to build out our own dashboard for it. Okay, I think with that, now everyone's looked at a bunch of charts. We'll send out the presentation and you can look at them again and compare cats and dogs and come up with questions, and email me if you have any questions about the data. Or if there's any data that's missing that you really, really are interested in, there's probably some way we can dig in and find it.
Thank you so much, April. This was great. And I made a note to check with you for our future webinar on the adoption marketing.
All righty, everyone. Have
you
a
are-
great rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you so much.